Well, after months of planning, the lofty goal for tomorrow's summit is no less than full denuclearisation on the Korean peninsula. But the high-level talks between the US and North Korea have been held before, only to eventually unravel. Anne Barker reports.
For almost as long as anyone can remember, North Korea has aspired to become a nuclear power, and last year's test of what Pyongyang said was a hydrogen bomb showed just how dangerous the Kim regime had become. The escalating hostilities raised the possibility of a direct military strike against Kim Jong-un's regime and led to some of the toughest language yet between the US and Pyongyang.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
It was ironically in the cold of the Winter Olympics in South Korea where relations began to thaw, paving the way for a historic meeting between North and South leaders and diplomatic overtures that opened the door for the summit in Singapore. Kim Jong-un even gave a commitment towards full denuclearisation. But amid the hype and optimism, it's easy to forget it's all been done before. 24 years ago, President Bill Clinton and Kim Jong-il signed off on a landmark agreement that promised to avert nuclear war.
This agreement will help to achieve a long-standing and vital American objective, an end to the threat of nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula.
But that agreement collapsed within 8 years. North Korea secretly continued its weapons program, and the US failed to keep its side of the bargain. Republicans under George W. Bush took a harder line, accusing Pyongyang of sponsoring terror.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
A new dialogue known as the Six-Party Talks tried to revive the goal of denuclearisation, but that too failed. The Obama years saw more missile strikes and crippling sanctions on Pyongyang. Given that history, it's hard to see how the Singapore summit will produce anything other than a commitment to more talks down the track. Even that might be ambitious.
So I am totally prepared to walk. It could happen. Maybe it won't be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary to walk.
Even if he doesn't walk, Donald Trump admits it's what happens after the summit that is key. Anne Barker, ABC News.
The Parliamentary Expenses Watchdog has questioned former Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce and his partner Vicky Campion extensively about taxpayer-funded travel. The Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority has told the ABC Mr Joyce has responded to 79 questions in relation to his travel expenses, while Ms Campion has been asked 57 questions in relation to hers. The couple strongly rejects they misused taxpayer funds. Mr Joyce is currently on personal leave. ABC personality Tom Ballard has been accused of sexual assault by a man on social media. The claim was published on Facebook, with the man alleging the comedian assaulted him in a hotel room in June 2014. The Tonightly host said in a statement that he had consensual sexual experience, and the allegation of assault is one he completely denies in the strongest possible terms. The ABC says it is aware of the claims and takes allegations of harassment very seriously. Well, hundreds of Australians have been awarded today for their service to their country and community in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. Three-time Paralympic gold medalist Kurt Fearnley has become an Officer of the Order of Australia for his work with disabled and Indigenous groups. Reporter Dan Cox caught up with him.
Kurt, what is your family saying about this AO?
I don't think I'll be enforcing the daddy AO to my kids. Honestly, it has more to do with driving me to try and assist change within this community than it does affect me as a dad or a husband or a brother or a son. I'm that person no matter what honour comes, no matter what event takes place. I'm the same kid that was crawling around Carcoar, and I'm the same husband and father and son and all that.
You're receiving it for distinguished service to people with a disability. That's just one part. What have you done for people with a disability?
Oh, I've tried. You know, you don't know the tangible outcomes, but I've hoped that I've had conversations that are worth having around disability. And for me, That's what disability is. Disability is a conversation. And the main part of that conversation is that how far are we willing to allow people with disabilities into our community? And how far are we willing and how much are we willing to pay or how much is community willing to work for us? When I first started to realise that I had a disability, the conversation or the answer to that question of how far are we willing was that I was to be special schooled, I was to be, if my family couldn't afford to travel, that I was to be institutionalised. That's the answer to that question back in '85. Now, the answer to the question about how far is the community willing to let us into in the sporting world, right to the top.
You're also being honoured for distinguished service to your fundraising efforts for Indigenous athletics and charitable organisations. What do you do for the Indigenous community?
Look, I did a lot of work with Rob de Castella's group, the Indigenous Marathon Project. They have been, honestly, I get way more out of it than what I'm able to put in. It's hard to receive recognition for that because I'm the one that benefits. Being able to hang around with the traditional owners of Australia, to really reflect on the tens of thousands of years of heritage that we have, rather than the couple of hundred that often gets highlighted. You know, that part of my life has been my privilege, rather than any sort of work that I get to give.
Kurt Fernley speaking with the ABC's Dan Cox there. Well, today marks the end of the Barunga Festival of Indigenous Art, Music and Culture south of the Northern Territory town of Katherine. The three-day event boasted an all-Indigenous music lineup, as well as cultural activities and sporting competitions. A memorandum of understanding was signed with the NT government to work towards a treaty. The celebration saw the tiny community of Barunga grow to 14 times its population. Organisers say this year's event was their biggest yet. It's been billed as the solution to a shortage of doctors in rural and regional Australia. Dozens of extra medical student places are being created at universities in country New South Wales. The hope is that people will fall in love with the bush and want to stay. But the policy is coming under mounting scrutiny, and sections of the medical community say the country is being hoodwinked.
Medical student Alice Marsh hails from Boorowa, near Young, and she'd like to complete her training in central New South Wales.
There's more medical students graduate each year, but the jobs at the end of the line aren't there. And it's a complex problem. You can't just create jobs out of nowhere. That wouldn't help either.
The federal government wants to bolster the number of doctors in regional and rural areas by offering more medical student places there. But it can't guarantee young doctors will be able to train in the bush after graduating.
So if you want to become a specialist in like cardiology or any sort of the physician type programs, and also surgery, you can't do all your training in the country. New
Nationals leader Michael McCormack is the policy's champion.
People love living in country areas. They can see that it's friendlier, there's less congestion, and the fact is we've got a need and a demand for more doctors.
The government is spending $95 million on the plan, which will link existing rural clinical schools and provide extra training places. It also wants to build a new medical school in Orange, and it is this part of the policy which is proving most controversial. The AMA's Dr John Zorbis says the government has adopted a simplistic approach.
The Deputy Prime Minister is selling the message that more medical schools equals more quality doctors for rural Australia. And that could not be further from the truth.
Depending on the field they choose to specialise in, doctors can spend many years in training. Places are limited and the competition is fierce.
I think it would be good to see more flexibility in being able to complete more of your specialist training in rural areas.
Alice Marsh says the problem is not convincing students to stay in the bush, but creating the opportunities for them to do so. Kathleen Ferguson, ABC News, Orange.
Well, the death of celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain last week in France was a stark reminder that mental health issues affect people from all walks of life. In Australia, men take their own lives at 4 times the rate of women, and they're more likely to die earlier and suffer more illness and accidents. Men and families making healthy connections is the theme for Men's Health Week, beginning today around Australia. And the Western Sydney University's Men's Health Information and Resource Centre hopes to inspire discussions about how they can better contribute to men's health and the health of their families and local communities. I'm joined now by Dr. Neil Hall, Assistant Director of the University's Men's Health Information and Resource Centre. Neil, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Let's talk about the theme of this week's Mental Health Week for Men, being that of men and families and the connections that they make. Why is that so important and this year's theme?
Certainly, I think there's plenty of research out there that tells us how important families are to men. We know that, for example, men who have 3 good relationships in their lives will live longer and will have a better quality of life as they live. It's up to 7 years longer they can live with 3 good quality relationships.
And could those relationships be ones with a son and their mother, a man and their partner, and a man and their children?
Certainly, but then beyond the family as well.
Right.
3 good friends.
Right.
That they're able to connect with.
So, given that this year the focus is about men and families, does it say that perhaps we're failing in that area? Do we not have great connections between men and families currently in Australia?
There are a lot of things that happen for men in society. One is that they are working very long hours now, and so keeping those connections with their families can be quite difficult. People who, for example, are commuting to work, leave home before 7 a.m, get home after 7 p.m. There's very little time there, really, for that connection, as well as the difficulty of finding other men to talk to in their lives beyond the workplace.
So what are some of the practical things on the agenda for this week's Mental Health Week for men?
Men's Health Week is based on the idea that local communities can organise local events. So the Men's Health Information Resource Centre at Western Sydney University coordinates Men's Health Week nationally, and we have over 200 local events registered nationwide. And so it's a very exciting way of promoting the idea of making health better for men, is for local communities to take control of that.
And what sort of events are there? I mean, we all pretty much will know about the men's sheds, but you said there's 200 registered events going on. What are they? What form do they take?
Yeah, quite varied actually. For example, there is somewhere in rural Victoria, I forget the actual town, but they're having a fathers and sons ping pong night. Yeah. Out in the Western Plains, there are some more kind of medically oriented health checks and prostate checks and things like that. I know that the New South Wales Police are doing about 12 different local area commands throughout the state are doing on-the-spot health checks for their workforce.
How can families better support the men in their lives?
I think one of the ways that Men's Health Week goes about this is not just about drawing attention to the health issues that men face, but also being able to kind of celebrate the strengths that men have. There's been a very recent trend to think about men having bad health and then being blamed for their own health problems. And one of the ways that we're trying to kind of, I suppose, dispel that myth a little bit is being able to say, well, there are a lot of ways that men contribute positively to their health and positively to their families. The whole idea of the breadwinner, for example, that's been an obvious thing that men have been doing for a very long time. And that's not to say that women are not breadwinners also. But there is a bit of a sense of being maligned for being occupied by work so much. So maybe we can use this week to think about that's actually a really good thing, that families have an income and a financial support base.
We're talking about men here, but is there much focus on boys and instilling mental courage and good mental health in our young men, our kids?
Certainly there are plenty of programs around the country and around the world that are focusing on boys' development. There are, for example, a range of mentoring programs that happen community-based, that give boys a sense of having other adult males to connect to, should they not have a regular adult male in their life. There are plenty of programs in schools, for example, that are looking at the area of building resilience and being able to cope with and respond positively to issues like bullying.
Oh, well, some great initiatives there. Look forward to the outcome of the ping pong championship.
Yes, I want to know about that one too.
Dr. Neil Hall, many thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And if you need information or support, you can contact Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36, or if you or someone you know is experiencing distress, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Well, this month is National Scoliosis Awareness Month, a condition which affects tens of thousands of people across Australia. One junior netballer has been competing in the Country Netball Championships in Adelaide 1 year after undergoing a major procedure to straighten her spine. Reporter Isabel Damon went along to the tournament to speak with her about her surgery and recovery.
13-year-old Olivia Domain is spending this weekend out on the netball court representing her hometown of Roxby Downs. But this time last year, she was recovering from major spinal surgery for severe scoliosis.
My sister was doing something on my back before Christmas and she told me to stand straight and I wasn't standing straight, and then we found out that I had something wrong with me, and then we went to the doctors and I had scoliosis. I had to have a halo for 2 weeks because it was so bad. And I couldn't do anything, so I was just laying in a bed and I just couldn't do anything. When I came out of the surgery, I didn't know I had it because I was like on all those drugs, and then I started walking around more and I was getting used to it more, and now I forgot about that it's in my back and I feel better.
So tell us, what is in your back?
2 titanium poles and 21 screws. It's been very scary, but very good as well, because now I can get back to all the sports that I used to do. I like running around, and I usually play goalkeeper and wing defence, but I don't know where I'll go in the future.
Well, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets across the United Kingdom to mark 100 years since British women won the right to vote. Those taking part wore the colours of the suffragette movement, green, white and violet, as part of what organisers called a mass participation living artwork.
They followed in the footsteps of the suffragettes of a century ago. In Belfast, they started at the Titanic Quarter. In Cardiff, their procession passed through the city centre. And in Edinburgh, they marched towards Holyrood Park.
It's been a great opportunity to find out more about our own history and name some of the women. There's so many, many more women have got great stories.
With all of these women, it's amazing, but especially to represent the inmates who we worked with on our banners in particular. There's one banner back there that has all of their names that they embroidered on.
We wanted to remember Kiwi women who were the first women in the world to get the vote. And some of them came over and helped the British suffragettes.
100 female artists were commissioned to work on projects to sew banners and make placards, just as the women of the suffrage did. Women like Emily Wilding Davison, who famously threw herself under the King's horse, spotted here in the black robes for the first time recently in this archive footage of a march in 1910. A commemoration, a celebration towards all those involved in the fight to secure some women the right to vote.
For a lot of these women, it is about paying homage to the suffrage movement that walked this very path 100 years ago. But then again, for a lot of other women, it's about the future and how they can achieve equality for all.
Well, the Socceroos have arrived in Russia ahead of their first World Cup match against France this Saturday. The game will take place in the Australian side's base city of Kazan. From there, Europe correspondent James Glenday reports.
The Socceroos are among the latest sides to arrive in Russia to make their final preparations for the World Cup, which kicks off in just 3 and a bit days' time. Later today, the Australian team will hold an open training session for fans here at their base camp in the city of Kazan, and a significant number of locals are expected to attend. The next few days will be the last chance for coach Bert van Marwijk to put the final few pieces of his World Cup puzzle in place. There's speculation midfielders like Massimo Luongo or even Tom Rogic may be reshuffled or replaced in the starting side in the wake of the team's fairly fortunate 2-1 win over Hungary in Budapest at the weekend. But while Australia still has some issues to iron out, their opening opponents, the highly fancied and potential tournament contenders France, are certainly fallible too. They drew 1-1 with a young USA side that they were expected to thrash. This World Cup, of course, comes amid deep diplomatic tensions between Western countries like Australia and Russia. Despite repeated warnings from politicians in Britain about fan safety, Russian authorities here insist everyone will be fine, and security around some of the major venues is already very tight.
James Glenday there. Well, continuing with the sporting theme now, I'm joined by Paul Kennedy. Good morning to you, PK. Rafa, he's taken out the French Open in straight sets.
Yes, Kath, there was, well, Rafa was a bit nervous about this one. It's his 11th title now. He need not have been nervous. Dominic Thiem was his opponent. And the reason he was nervous, I guess, was of everyone in the world, Thiem's the only guy that's beaten him on clay in the last couple of years. He beat him a little bit earlier this year in one of the lead-up tournaments. But Nadal knows his game. He loves this environment. 11 times. I'm still getting my head around the fact that he's won it 11 times. His win-loss records at Roland Garros is 86 wins and 2 losses. It's phenomenal. And, well, I'll let Dominic Thiem put it into context. Well, let's hear from Rafa and then the runner-up.
It's amazing. No, I can't describe my feelings because even it's not even a dream win here the 11th time now, because it's impossible to think in something like this. So just can say thank you very, very much, everybody. It's just fantastic. Thanks.
Rafa, very well done. I think what you did and what you are doing, it's one of the most outstanding things that an athlete ever achieved in sports, to win this tournament 11 times. Congrats, it's amazing. Bravo.
Yes, I think he's right there. One of the greatest achievements in sport, 11 times French Open champion. And Dominic Thiem will hope he retires at some stage soon so he can win one. He's a class act on clay as well, but he's got a few more years to go.
Both of them such gentlemen there.
Yeah, oh, they're great. And I tell you, watching Rafa Nadal at a presentation ceremony after winning a French Open is a lesson in linguistics as well. He, of course, speaks multiple languages, but does the acceptance speech in French and English. And for much of the world which speaks more than one language, that's okay and might be a bit normal, but for me, that's extra special.
Absolutely, PK.
Yeah.
Now, in rugby, some good news for the women's sevens.
Yeah, well, good and bad news. They lost the final this morning, which was played against New Zealand, but we already knew that they had enough points in the bank to win the World Championship. This is a team that started to become well recognised in Australia and in the world of rugby for its exploits in 2016. They won the world title then went on to win the Rio Olympics and won the gold medal for Australia in a breakout performance. In this tournament here, well, they were runner-up, and runner-up's pretty good. If you've won a couple of those series events already, the Australian points, there's Charlotte Caslick, who was the co-captain for this particular event in Paris. Just not quite good enough in the final against New Zealand, 33-7. But some of these sevens finals come down to the first couple of minutes. If you get off on the wrong foot, then it's hard to play catch-up because the halves are only 7 minutes as well. So terrific performance there by an outstanding group of players. They've had their injury setbacks as well, so they've overcome challenges to be world champion again. OK, to boxing now. And what next for Jeff Horn after that loss to Terence Crawford over the weekend? I believe he's going to have a bit of a rest now, well-earned rest. He was outclassed by Crawford, and really he was, after he beat Pacquiao and then was thrust into this world of really the best boxers in the world, he was up against Terence Crawford, and I don't think he'll pursue, I don't think there's much marketing potential for a matchup anyway, a rematch, but he'll have to go and fight another opponent or two, maybe stay around and try and fight in Las Vegas again, or come home and fight Mundine just for some cash. But maybe even retire. He's had a couple of big bouts. I'm not sure it gets better than beating Pacquiao in Brisbane like he did last year.
He might go and take in a few Vegas shows, maybe PK.
I hope he's okay, that's all.
Yeah.
I hope he heals well.
OK. Paul Kennedy, thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Time for a check of the weather now with Nate Byrne.
Good morning, Kath. We've got a low that's moving through the Bight. That's extending a cold front over southern WA. Meanwhile, some showers in onshore winds are expected for the southern half of the east coast. For Queensland, it's going to be a mostly fine day. There is just a chance of some showers for the northeast tropics, though. For Brisbane, mostly sunny today. You're getting to 23 degrees. We've got showers for the coastal fringe of New South Wales. Some rain developing as well for the southern interior later. Sydney, you're getting a shower or two. 18 degrees is the top, and Canberra will be mostly sunny, 14 there. Some cloud is increasing for Victoria ahead of rain that'll develop in the west this afternoon and then reach into central districts for this evening. Melbourne, cloud is increasing later, maybe some rain tonight as well, 17 degrees. And we've got morning showers around the east of Tasmania and a wet one for the north. Otherwise, it's going to be fine. For Hobart, a mostly sunny 16. It's staying clear for most of South Australia, but showers are developing through much of the south. Possible storms as well for the southeast. And there's a warning for damaging winds, gusts up to 90 kilometres an hour for the lower Eyre Peninsula. And for Kangaroo Island, Adelaide, your showers are increasing, a top of 20 degrees. Over in Western Australia, we've got a few showers for the southern and western coasts. A sunny day otherwise. For Perth, you're getting a shower or two, 19 degrees. And further north, clear skies continue, apart from a possible shower for the northeast of Arnhem Land. Darwin, sunny and 32. Tomorrow, Kath, we'll see that cold front moving through the southeast. The next one is going to make its way through the southwest. So we've got weather easing for Adelaide and Melbourne, some showers for Canberra and Perth, and the other capitals are staying fine.
Thanks, Nate. Well, coming up on the ABC News channel, we'll go live to South Korea ahead of the historic US-North Korea summit. Do stay with us.